Fellow citizens of Burkina Faso, my brothers and sisters across Africa, and to the international observers who still think we are weak, listen carefully. Today, I address you not only as the leader of a sovereign nation, but as the voice of a continent that has had enough. Enough of the exploitation, enough of the hypocrisy, and enough of the arrogance that treats African soil as a warehouse for imperial greed. We received a demand from former US President Donald Trump. A demand for 60% of our gold and our oil in exchange for so-called protection and partnership. Let me be very clear. Burkina Faso is not for sale. Our people are not your slaves. Our resources are not your inheritance. The era when men in suits came from across the oceans to dictate our future with threats and handshakes is over. If you come to us with respect, we will respond with friendship. But if you come to us with threats, you will leave empty-handed. They think because we are small, we are weak. They think because we are black, we are blind. They think because we are poor, we are powerless. But I say this today. Africa is waking up. Burkina Faso stands at the front of that awakening. We are not afraid to reject demands, no matter who makes them, even if it is a man who once called Africa a shithole. We are not his colony, and we never will be. We will not hand over our gold so another man can gild his tower. We will not sell our oil so that someone else's economy can burn while ours is starved. And we will not trade dignity for dollars. Let it be known across the world. Burkina Faso chooses sovereignty over submission. We choose sacrifice over servitude. We choose Africa over empire. This is not just about Burkina Faso. This is about the soul of Africa. To my fellow African leaders, now is the time to stop bending. Now is the time to stand up. Not tomorrow. Now. We do not seek war. We seek dignity. We do not seek enemies. We seek respect. But if respect is denied, we are ready to fight with our minds, our hearts, and if necessary, our hands. Burkina Faso will walk forward with pride. Let history remember this day. Not as the day we were bullied into submission, but as the day we told the world, Africa will not kneel. My people, my brothers and sisters of Africa, and to the watching world, today I speak not with hesitation, but with the full weight of our dignity, because what happened this week was not just an insult to Burkina Faso, it was an insult to the soul of Africa. Days ago, my government received what can only be described as an ultimatum, not a request, not a negotiation, but a demand. A demand from none other than the former President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, who through private channels and corporate proxies proposed that Burkina Faso surrender 60% of its gold and oil to foreign interests under the guise of partnership and protection. Let that sink in. 60%, more than half of the wealth God placed beneath our soil, demanded by a man who has never set foot on our land, never spoken to our farmers, never seen our wounded soldiers, and never tasted the pain we've endured to reclaim our sovereignty. I want to make this crystal clear to all who dare think of Africa as a warehouse of cheap labor and raw material. Burkina Faso is not your mine. We are not your colony. For decades, no, for centuries, Africa has been treated as a silent continent. A continent whose leaders nod in agreement while their people starve. A continent that is told what to sell, when to sell it, and for how little. That age is over. The age of silent compliance is over. Today we take a stand, not in hostility, but in defense of our dignity. We are not anti-American. We are not anti-West, but we are absolutely against exploitation, manipulation, and economic domination, no matter who it comes from or what title they once held. You see, many around the world laughed when they heard that Burkina Faso, a small landlocked country, dared to say no to a man who once led the most powerful country on earth. But I ask you, is strength measured by the size of your army or by the courage of your convictions? Because in that moment when we rejected that demand, we proved something they never expected. That Africa remembers, that Africa resists, that Africa rises, I did not come into power to be the manager of foreign interests. I came to be the guardian of our people's future. Our gold belongs to the miners who labor in the sun, not to billionaires who sit in marble towers. Our oil belongs to the children in our schools, not to foreign shareholders. Our resources will not be exchanged for false promises or security contracts that protect only the wealth of others. They told us, sign the deal and we'll protect you from terrorism. But who funds the terror? Who sells the weapons? Who benefits from our instability? We are not naive. We have learned from Libya. We have seen the fate of leaders who refuse to kneel, but we do not fear death. We fear servitude. And to my fellow African leaders, let this be a signal. If Burkina Faso can reject this insult, so can you. If a small nation with limited means can defend its sovereignty, then what excuse remains for silence? This is bigger than one country. This is about whether Africa will write its own story or continue reading a script handed down by those who never had our interest at heart. To the people of the world, especially those in the West, do not be misled by the headlines that will follow. They will call me a dictator, a radical, a destabilizer, but they will never tell you why. They fear the message that Africa can think for itself. They fear the image of a black nation that stands tall and says enough. They fear that if one country breaks the chains, others will follow. And to Donald Trump, wherever you may be, I say this with the utmost clarity. We are not intimidated by your wealth. We are not impressed by your towers. We are not for sale. You do not own our soil, our skies, or our souls. You can keep your threats. We will keep our freedom. To my people, we will go through hardship. Yes, the road to true independence is not paved with comfort, but every sacrifice we make today will plant the seeds of a future where our children will not be beggars in their own land. Let history remember this moment, not as the day we were bought, but as the day we broke the chain. My people, my comrades across the continent, and to those beyond our borders who still do not understand us, I ask that you listen closely. There is a disease that has infected Africa for centuries. It does not come with tanks. It does not wear uniforms. It speaks the language of investment and partnership. But it is not new, it is not friendly, and it is not welcome here anymore. I am speaking of neo-colonialism, the new mask of old masters. This week we were presented with a proposal, an insult in truth from a man who once ruled the United States, Donald J. Trump. Through shadow companies and backdoor envoys, he offered us a deal. 60% control over Burkina Faso's gold and oil reserves, in exchange for vague promises of investment, infrastructure, and security. In simpler terms, give us your wealth, and we might protect you. Let me ask the world, does this sound like a partnership to you? No. It is theft. It is coercion wrapped in a contract. It is colonization wearing a suit and tie. They believe that by putting new words to old tricks, we will not notice, but we notice everything now. Burkina Faso may not have the most powerful army. We may not sit on the boards of global financial institutions, but we have eyes, we have memory, we have pride. And let me say on behalf of every citizen in this nation, we were not born to be owned. They speak of investment, but what kind of investment takes more than it gives? They speak of protection, but who protects us from the very men offering security? Protection should never come with a price tag that includes your nation's soul. Economists, historians, patriots, all agree. If we had accepted such a deal, it would have amounted to economic suicide. We would have handed over the keys to our future, letting foreign hands decide the price of our labor, the fate of our children, and the direction of our destiny. Let me remind you, 60% is not just a number. That is 60% of schools we could have built, 60% of hospitals we could have equipped, 60% of jobs, dignity, and self-reliance gone. This is not investment. This is enslavement. And they dare to package it in the language of development. Tell me, how can we develop when we are not allowed to own the fruits of our own land? How can we stand tall when our pockets are emptied before we even fill them? We say no, not just to Trump's demand, but to the entire model it represents. A model where Africa remains a supplier of raw material and a consumer of foreign mercy. A model where our leaders become brokers, not builders. A model where contracts are written in Paris, signed in Washington, and enforced in Ouagadougou at the cost of our blood. That era ends here. To those who think this rejection was reckless, let me ask, what is more reckless? To say no to a bad deal, or to say yes to a future where our grandchildren will still be renting their inheritance from foreign corporations? To those who accuse us of isolation, we are not against the world. We are for sovereign partnership. If you come with respect, transparency, and mutual benefit, we will welcome you. But if you come with contracts that bind us and promises that betray us, then understand this: we will not sign. I did not fight to free this country just to hand it back to boardrooms in New York or Dubai. Our soldiers did not bleed in the north so we could lease the gold beneath them to the highest bidder. Our farmers did not till this land for foreign wealth funds to reap what they did not sow. Burkina Faso is not your experiment. Burkina Faso is not your asset. Burkina Faso is not your puppet. To the African Union, I urge you, wake up. How many more of these deals are being signed behind closed doors? How many of our nations are being bought in silence while their people sleep in poverty? If Burkina Faso can say no, so can you. Let this moment mark a turning point when Africa no longer trades its inheritance for illusion. And to Mr. Trump, hear me clearly. You may have towers, you may have wealth, you may have power, but what we have is conviction, and no power on earth can purchase the will of a free people. To the people of Burkina Faso, let this moment remind you, you are the guardians of this land. Our gold is yours, our oil is yours, our future is yours, and under my leadership it shall remain that way. Let others sell their nations. We will defend ours. We are not for sale. This chant born in the streets of Ouagadougou now roars across the continent. In Mali, our neighbors marched with pride, chanting our message in Bambara and French. In Niger, the youth took to the streets, raising their fists saying, Traore speaks for us. In Guinea, old revolutionaries wiped tears from their eyes. They thought they would die before hearing those words spoken again. And even in the suburbs of South Africa, far from our borders, people rose and said, enough, enough of foreign hands stealing African futures. I did not create this movement. You did. This is not about one man or one government or one country. This is the voice of a continent awakening, a continental rallying cry that cannot be ignored. For too long, Africa has been fragmented. We have been divided by languages we did not choose, borders we did not draw, and debts we did not create. And while we squabbled, others profited. But now we are beginning to unite around the one thing they cannot take from us, our dignity. When I rejected the so-called deal to hand over 60% of our gold and oil, they thought we would be isolated. They thought Burkina Faso would be punished, cut off, alone, desperate. But instead, Africa rallied. We were not abandoned. We were embraced. And today, Pan-Africanist leaders, those brave enough to speak truth in the face of imperial wealth, are calling for something long overdue: the creation of an African sovereignty bloc. A union of nations committed to resisting foreign exploitation and building continental strength. Imagine this, my brothers and sisters. A bloc of nations that refuse to be dictated to by international financiers, that reject conditional aid tied to the theft of our resources, that invest in each other first before looking overseas. Imagine an Africa that trades with itself, that defends itself, that educates its own children and tells its own story in its own voice. This is not a fantasy, this is not a dream, this is a necessity. And we, Burkina Faso, we will stand at the front of that formation. We will not beg for acceptance into clubs that never respected us. We will not kneel before institutions that profited off our pain. Instead, we will build new alliances with those who understand that Africa must be free in fact, not just on paper. To the youth gathered here today, you are not here just to listen. You are here to build. This movement needs your minds. It needs your energy. It needs your defiance. Do not let anyone tell you that you are too small to make change. I was once just a soldier. Now I am here, speaking for a nation. And with your voices behind me, speaking for a continent. To those watching in Washington, Paris, London, know this. The age of backroom deals and puppet regimes is ending. Africa is not your playground. We will no longer rent out our land, our labor, or our lives. We will no longer accept that our gold shines in your banks while our children die in dust. We will no longer accept that our oil fuels your economy while our people cook with wood. We will no longer accept your definitions of development that leave us in chains. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. Some say we are playing with fire, that we are provoking the powerful. But I say this: it is better to burn standing up than to live forever on our knees. This continent has too many martyrs. Now we need builders. We need artists, engineers, teachers, farmers, people who will shape this Africa with their own hands. And we will protect them, not with the help of mercenaries, but with the unity of sovereign nations. I call upon the leaders of Mali, Niger, Guinea, Chad, the DRC, South Africa, Algeria, and beyond. Let us meet. Let us form this bloc. Let us declare together: our resources will serve our people, not your profits. Let this be the beginning of a new chapter. One that Sankara, Nkrumah, Lumumba, and Biko dreamed of, but never lived to see. Let our enemies prepare their headlines. Let them plan their sanctions. We are ready. We are united. We are no longer afraid. Because now they face not just a nation, they face a continent that is wide awake. My fellow citizens of Burkina Faso, my African brothers and sisters, and to those watching across the world from Wall Street to the City of London, let me speak to you today not as a politician, but as a witness to something the world did not expect. The tremble of the global markets at the sound of Africa rising, when we refused to hand over 60% of our gold and oil to foreign interests. They said we were making a mistake. They said the markets would panic. They said investment would flee. And you know what? They were right. The markets did panic. Within 48 hours, the price of gold spiked by 7%. Oil markets surged with unprecedented volatility. Investment analysts in New York, London, Frankfurt, and Geneva began holding emergency meetings. Corporate boardrooms whispered the same fear. What if other African countries follow Traore's lead? Let me say it plainly, that is not our fear. That is our plan. Africa asserting control over its own resources should not be a crisis. It should be the normal state of justice in the world. Yet when we simply say this gold is ours, the price of gold jumps. When we declare this world belongs to our people, traders panic. Ask yourselves, what kind of system is this, where peace exists only if Africa remains exploited? They call our decision radical. They call our courage risky. And in hushed tones, some in the West now whisper of an African spring of resource nationalism. I have heard that term. I have read their headlines. They use the word nationalism as if it were a threat. They say it with the same voice they once used to say revolution, not with curiosity, but with fear. But let me correct the record. This is not a spring. This is not a season. This is the new era of African ownership. And if markets shake when we rise, then let them tremble. Because for too long, Africa's resources have stabilized their economies while destabilizing our societies. For decades, our gold has backed their currencies, while our people die poor. Our oil has lit their cities, while our villages go dark. We are not the cause of global instability. We are the victims of its design. To the financial institutions who now scramble to adjust their forecasts, you must rewrite your models. No longer can you assume that African governments will simply hand over their wealth for crumbs. No longer can you build portfolios on stolen futures. To the investors who once saw Africa as a bottomless mine, understand this. If you want to do business here, you will do so on our terms. If you want partnership, it must be fair and transparent. If you want access to our resources, they must benefit our people first. This is not hostility. This is balance. This is not isolation. This is realignment. Let me ask you this. Why is it that when America defends its oil, it's called national security, but when Africa defends its gold, it's called nationalism? Why is it that when Europe sets quotas and tariffs, It's called economic policy. But when Africa sets conditions, it's called a crisis. They are not afraid of chaos. They are afraid of order. African-led order. To my fellow Africans, we must be prepared. The markets will react. Currencies will fluctuate. They will try to scare us. But hear me now. Short-term volatility is a small price to pay for long-term sovereignty. Yes, we may feel some discomfort. Yes, some contracts may be frozen. But I would rather tighten our belts today than hand over our children's future tomorrow. And to those in Africa still hesitating, I understand your caution. But remember this, markets do not build nations, people do. And when the people are united, no price index can measure their power. I call now for the creation of an African Commodity Sovereignty Council, a united body of African nations that sets fair prices, defends our natural wealth, and removes Africa from the mercy of foreign market speculators. We must stop being the continent that others define. We must become the continent that defines itself. Let them call it radical. Let them call it nationalism. Let them call it what they want. We call it survival. We call it justice. We call it Africa becoming whole. And so, to every market that shakes when we rise, let them shake. Because we are not afraid of your charts, your algorithms, your headlines. We are no longer playing your game. We are rewriting the rules. And let the markets know we are no longer for sale. Comrades of Burkina Faso, Pan-African allies, and to the governments watching us closely from embassies, from television screens, from surveillance satellites, hear me clearly. We are not a threat. We are not a pawn. We are a sovereign nation, and our sovereignty is not up for negotiation. This past month, the world witnessed what they thought was impossible. An African head of state stood firm and rejected an imperial demand. Not behind closed doors, but boldly, publicly, with the people watching. When we refused to hand over 60% of our gold and oil to foreign hands, when we chose our dignity over dollars, we knew there would be consequences. We knew they would not accept our independence easily, and now we are seeing those consequences unfold. The United States State Department, in a flurry of press conferences and diplomatic communiques, has gone into crisis mode. They now say that Donald Trump was acting alone, that his proposal to seize our resources was a private initiative, not a matter of US policy, that they respect Burkina Faso's sovereignty. We hear their words, but we are not fooled by them, because behind those carefully written statements, we hear whispers, and we know what those whispers mean. We've heard them before in Libya, in Congo, in Guinea, in Zimbabwe, and in Mali. Those whispers say, can we destabilize him? Can we isolate his government? What pressure can we apply? Can we trigger unrest from within? Let me speak directly to those behind the closed doors of Washington, Langley, and Brussels. We are not Gaddafi. We are not Sankara. We are not Lumumba. We have learned. We have studied your playbook. We know your tactics. The economic chokeholds. The engineered coups. The weaponization of media. The secret meetings with puppets in waiting. And let me say this, not with arrogance, but with certainty. We are ready for you. This nation does not stand alone. We stand with Mali, Niger, Guinea, and with millions of Africans who have declared with one voice, enough. If you attempt to sanction us, we will survive. If you attempt to isolate us, we will build new alliances. If you attempt to undermine us, we will expose you. And if you attempt to divide our people, you will fail. Let me remind the world that Burkina Faso is not your property. We are not the edge of someone else's empire. We are not a poor country. We are a rich land with a people who are reclaiming what is ours. Your threats do not scare us. Your headlines do not shame us. Your money does not move us. You speak of democracy, but only when the winner is the one you choose. You speak of stability, but only when your companies profit from it. You speak of freedom, but only when it serves your interests. So today we send you this message loud and clear. We would rather walk barefoot on free soil than ride in luxury under foreign chains. To my fellow Africans, do you see what happens when you simply say no? The most powerful nations on earth begin to panic. Why? Because they do not fear war. They fear independent thought. They do not fear our armies. They fear our unity. They do not fear our poverty. They fear our refusal to be poor anymore. So let us not back down. Let us remember that we are not isolated. We are leading. In Mali, children chant our names. In Niger, elders pray for our protection. In Guinea, workers refuse contracts that bleed their nation dry. This is not just a political stance. This is a continental awakening. And to those within our nation, those who may be tempted by outside promises, those who whisper betrayal in exchange for power, know this: there is no place for puppets in the new Burkina Faso. We will expose the agents. We will dismantle the networks. We will protect this revolution with everything we have. Not for ourselves, but for the generations to come. Because what we are building is not just resistance, it is rebirth. A nation where resources feed our people. A nation where foreign policy begins at home. A nation where sovereignty is not a slogan, it is sacred. Let this be a message to all who scheme behind closed doors. We see you. We are not afraid of you. We will not run from you. And we will never bow to you. You have spent decades shaping the world in your image. Now we will shape our own. Burkina Faso will remain free. Africa will remain rising. And no amount of pressure, propaganda, or covert operation will stop the will of a people who have chosen to stand. Long live Burkina Faso. Long live African resistance. And let those who conspire against us know the age of foreign domination is over. Comrades, patriots, Pan-African warriors, today I do not speak merely as a head of state. I speak as a son of Africa, a continent whose wounds are deep, but whose heart still beats boldly. They say my last speech has gone viral. They compare my words to those of Sankara and Lumumba. I say, do not compare, continue. Continue what they started. Continue what they died for. Because this is not about a speech, this is about a mission. And that mission is clear. The time has come to end Western exploitation, not just in Burkina Faso, not just in West Africa, but across the entire African continent. We have waited long enough. We have begged long enough. We have compromised, signed their documents, joined their institutions, obeyed their conditions. And what have we received in return? Debt, dependency, destruction. They told us structural adjustment would save us. They told us foreign aid would lift us. They told us the free market would free us. But we are not free. Because no nation is free if it does not control its own resources. And so today I call not just for resistance. I call for rebirth. Not just for independence, but for a new world order. One built not on exploitation, but on respect. Not on domination, but on cooperation. Not on extraction, but on shared prosperity. Let me be clear. We will no longer play by rules we did not write. Let the West keep its double standards. Let them keep their hypocrisy. Let them keep their clubs where they make decisions about us. Without us, Africa will now build its own table. And only those who respect us will sit at it. This new global order begins with us. We must look inward, not outward. We must trade with each other before begging at the feet of others. We must protect our currencies, our data, our land and our labor from those who have always seen Africa as a marketplace, not a partner. And I call upon every African head of state, every youth leader, every village chief and urban planner, every woman who sells in the market, and every man who toils in the mine. Let us unite in Pan-African economic solidarity. Let us create an African resource exchange where we trade gold for grain, oil for medicine, not for dollars that disappear into Swiss accounts. Let us form an African central bank free from Western lenders and their chains of interest and debt, because the greatest wealth we have is not beneath our soil. It is in our unity. They have divided us too long. Francophone, Anglophone, Arabophone, Lusophone, Christian, Muslim, indigenous, these were the walls they built to divide us, and through division they ruled. But I say, from Cairo to Cape Town, from Dakar to Dar es Salaam, we are one Africa, and if we want true liberation, it must be continental and it must be economic. Political flags mean nothing if our minds are owned by foreigners. National anthems mean nothing if our budgets are dictated by IMF officials. Independence Day parades mean nothing if we are still in chains invisible, but heavy. Our fight today is not for charity. It is not for inclusion. It is for control. Control of our land. Control of our laws. Control of our destiny. Some call this radical. Some call it dangerous. But what is more dangerous, to live under the illusion of progress, or to fight for real irreversible transformation? And to the youth watching this from Ghana, from Congo, from Kenya, from the slums of Lagos to the highlands of Rwanda, this is your moment. This is your generation. Take the torch. Set it ablaze. Do not wait for orders. Be the order. To those in the diaspora, you were stolen from us, but you are still ours. Return, not just with skills, but with spirit. Come not as visitors, but as rebuilders of the motherland. And to those in the West who still believe Africa can be manipulated, intimidated, or controlled, listen carefully. Your era is over. Your empire is crumbling. Your lies are exposed. The children of Sankara now wear uniforms. The followers of Lumumba now hold power. And we will finish what they began. This is our vow. We will build a new global order, rooted in justice, built on respect, defended by unity, sustained by African hands. Let our voice thunder through the halls of Davos and echo across the corridors of the UN. Africa is not your resource pit. Africa is not your charity case. Africa is not your future, it is its own. We are not waiting, we are not begging. We are building. Long live Burkina Faso. Long live the legacy of Sankara. Long live a united Africa, strong, sovereign, and unshakable.